Hello there, I am fantasy author Dianna Gunn, and today I would like to share with you the story behind my semicolon tattoo, which is also my first tattoo. So I have always loved tattoos. My dad had a wolf tattoo right here on his forearm, and I loved looking at it as a kid, and I adored it, and I'm really into punk rock, and if there's anything that goes with punk rock, it's tattoos, so it was just a natural extension of everything I already loved. And I wanted tattoos of my own from the time that I was very, very young, and my dad passed away when I was 12, and so for a long time the only tattoo in my head that I wanted was a wolf, similar to what he had. Unfortunately, we were very poor, so there are no photographs of this wolf, and it's probably going to take me another decade to figure out what I actually want to do with my wolf tattoo. The other thing is that I know for sure I want my wolf to be a big, detailed piece. I want it to be a masterpiece. I don't want to just put any wolf on my body. And the only other tattoo that I wanted for a long time, a phoenix, I have a similar ambition. I want it to be a big piece that's going to have lots of detail and that is going to really be magnificent. A true masterpiece painted on my body. But a lot of people I know who have lots of tattoos suggested really strongly that I start with something smaller just to get used to the tattoo gun. Not because it's particularly gruesome or agonizing, but just that I have a feel for it and I understand what I'm getting myself into when I go for my bigger tattoos. And for a long time I was like, well, that's a great idea, but I don't have any tattoo designs that I would want in a smaller format. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I stumbled upon something called the Semicolon Project. And the Semicolon Project is two things. It is a non-profit that is dedicated to raising awareness about mental illness and suicide and preventing suicide and helping people live with their mental illness and cope and build better lives. The semicolon tattoo, and the reason why Project Semicolon is named Project Semicolon, is because in grammar, the semicolon is when you could have ended a sentence but you chose not to. The tattoo represents a time when you could have chosen to end your life, but you didn't. As a writer, I immediately fell in love with the idea of the Semicolon Project. The semicolon has always been my favorite punctuation mark, and the idea of this was the time I chose to end my life but didn't rings so true to me, because I have struggled with depression, I have struggled with suicidal thoughts, and I have come very, very close to ending my life, but I never have. And the other thing I've never done is I've never stopped writing. I always was pursuing my dream, even if it was only writing a few sentences a week when I was going through really serious depression. I always kept writing. And so the semicolon tattoo immediately seemed like a great way to represent both my continuing struggle with mental illness and the things that I've already accomplished, the aspects of my mental illness that I have already overcome, and my writing journey, and the fact that I will never give up on that. But I knew right away that I didn't want just a semicolon. I wanted something different, something unique, something that would make it clear that this is about my personal journey. This isn't just about mental illness in general or suicide in general. This is about me and my personal survival, the personal battle that I have fought. And so I spent a ton of time researching different types of semicolon tattoos, seeing all the ideas, seeing what people had, and really thinking about how I could make it unique, make it my own. And this is what I ended up with. Pretty great, don't you think? So, now you've seen it, I'm going to do a quick breakdown of what all of these symbols are and what they mean to me. And hopefully this will give you some inspiration if you've been thinking about a semicolon tattoo of your own. And if not, even if you just like the tattoo, I'm still glad you're here, and I'm really happy to be able to share this with you, because that is the entire point of the semicolon tattoo, is to get the conversation started. Let's start at the top. This spiral represents the spiral of life, which is a concept that largely features in Celtic mythology. There are Celtic spirals everywhere, all over historical artifacts, and there are really written documents to show us exactly what they mean, but the most common belief is that the Celtic spiral represents the cycle of life and the passing of the seasons and the constant journey that we are all on. And I've always really loved this idea of the spiral of life. It makes more sense to me than a circle because I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation. I don't not believe in reincarnation, but honestly I'm kind of on the fence about it, and I really do feel like even if there is reincarnation, that it's not for everyone and it's not for every lifetime. And so I still feel like the spiral of life is the most accurate visual representation because it has a fixed endpoint. It's also kind of an obscure Final Fantasy X reference. The place they all live in is called Spira, and there's a whole thing with the spiral of life, or in that world more accurately, the spiral of death. And I'm a huge Final Fantasy X nerd. I played that game like 7 times, so most people will actually jump to Celtic Spiral of Life first, which is why I said that first, but to me, when I look at it, I tend to think of Final Fantasy X first because it's so ingrained in my head and that game completely changed my life. So that is the spiral of life. This tale, the tale of the semicolon, you'll note that it isn't filled in, and in fact, it and the spiral have kind of a splatter effect going on. And I actually only decided to do this partway through the tattoo because as we were doing the outline and I looked at it, I was like, you know, I kind of almost like it better not filled in because it represents that this is still an ongoing journey and that as far as I have come, the struggle will never truly be over. I will always have to fight for my joy because my default is sadness and depression. And so we stopped and we talked about it a little bit and we decided to go with this splatter effect because it also represents that I am an artist and that even in my darkest times I'm still creating. And in fact, a lot of my best art has come out of my darkest times. And I don't believe that the link between those two things is intrinsic or necessary, but it has definitely been there for me in a lot of my life. And I really wanted to represent that, and to represent that it is still ongoing. And maybe, you know, someday if I feel like I've really conquered my depression beast, I will actually go back and get this filled in. But for now, I'm going to keep it this way because it reminds me that there is still so much work to do, and that my life and my mind could be so much better. Alright, so that was the explanation of the tale, which brings us to the final part of my tattoo, which are these words. In my darkest night, I am beautiful. And this is actually a modified lyric from the song The Grey by Icon for Hire. The actual lyric is, in your darkest night, you are beautiful. And there's a huge story behind this lyric. I knew for a long time that I kind of wanted to have an Icon for Hire lyric to go with my semicolon tattoo. And I knew that because Icon for Hire's music deals heavily with anxiety and depression and just general mental anguish and overcoming it, and it is so amazing. And each of their albums has come out, and when it came out, it represented the stage I was in my own mental health journey at the time the album was released. And so I discovered them after their first album came out, 2 or 3 years after, and I think their second album had just come out when I discovered them. And I immediately went, wow, I wish I had found this first album when it first came out because I really could have used that then. I needed something like that in my life. I needed that music, and I didn't have it. I didn't find it until much later, but I wish I had. And The Grey is from Scripted, which is the first Icon for Hire album, and I actually love that song so much that when they were doing a Kickstarter campaign for their most recent album, I almost paid $100 to get a handwritten signed copy of the lyrics to that song from Ariel herself. That's the lead singer. And I didn't have the funds to make that happen, but I was still really in love with the words, and after a long time and sorting through all of the different lyrics and trying to figure out what spoke to me most, in the end it was always this lyric that I came back to, and the whole chorus too, which is, "In your weakest hour, in your darkest night, you are still beautiful." And I knew I didn't want to get the whole thing tattooed on my arm because I got pretty small arms and I didn't want to take up all of that space. But also because I feel like I just wanted a few brief words to really encapsulate how I felt. And so I chose "In my darkest night, I am beautiful" because I wanted to remember that there's always still good that comes out of suffering. And most of my amazing artwork is somewhere rooted in the pain that I have experienced. And that might just be the seed, and I might do a whole bunch of work on that afterwards that has nothing to do with my pain or that is not coming from that place of pain. But there's always a seed of my own pain in every story I write and everything I do artistically. And I really wanted to represent that and to be able to look at this tattoo when I'm struggling and go, it's okay that I'm struggling right now. I am still beautiful, and there is still some good that will come from this. There is something to be learned here. There is some way to turn this into an opportunity for forward momentum, for progress in my life. There's so many songs I love and so many bands I love, but there's never been a band that has touched my heart in the way that I Come For Hire has touched my heart. I've never felt like so much like someone was going through the exact same journey that I was. And that incredible feeling and that connection and just knowing that I am not alone is incredible. And every time I look at my arm now, I will remember that. I am not alone. I am still beautiful, and there is always something to be learned. There is always a way to turn around and gain something positive from your struggle. Alright, so that got a little bit more emotional than I thought it would, but I guess I shouldn't really be surprised because this is fairly sensitive subject matter. It's something I'm pretty comfortable talking about with all of my friends, and I did get the tattoo to start a conversation. But it's a little bit different sitting here and yapping to a camera about it and knowing that this is going to go online in like 24 hours. So I really hope that this means something to you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the tattoo itself, on the semicolon project. This really, again, this tattoo is meant to start a conversation, so please start a conversation with me in the comments section and let's talk about mental illness. And hey, if you've got some cool tattoo ideas of your own, let me know. I'd love to hear about those too. Thank you so much for watching. I am author Dianna Gunn, and I will see you next Monday.